as we wait for everyone to kind of join, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Rob Sachs. I am a resident of Kensington, have been so for about 10, 12 years now, and very happy to host this candidates forum. We have 3 people vying for 2 seats on the town council. We have Ann Lichter, Nate Engel, who's currently a council person, and Jon Gerson. I want to thank Matt Hoffman, Mayor Tracey, and the folks at Montgomery Municipal Cable System, who are also helping out with tonight's event, Melissa Amold. So the format for this candidates forum, each candidate will have time for an opening segment or statement that will be last 90 seconds. And then we'll do a round robin of questions with each candidate getting a chance to answer. And the priority for the questions will be those that have already been submitted to the town of Kensington, and we'll get that underway. I just also want to remind everyone that the election is this Monday, the 6th of June. It's from 6 to 9 in person at Town Hall, or you can vote absentee ballot. You can visit tok.md.gov, town.kensington.maryland.gov, tok.md.gov for more information if you want to participate absentee. But of course, Monday, I think a week from today, 6 to 9, this time in a week, you could go there. Will be a party at Town Hall, socially distanced and responsible, of course. Without further ado, I want to say thanks again to our candidates. Matt, I think we're okay to go. He's giving me thumbs up. Yes. So we'll go ahead. Yes, thumbs up. Great. We'll start things off. And in my randomly selected order, I have Ann going first. If you'd like to start off with your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Rob, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight, and including my fellow candidates. And I want to also thank the town staff who put a lot of work into our elections. My name is Ann Lichter. I've lived in Kensington since 2010. I moved here with my husband when we were expecting our 3rd child, and we moved to Fawcett Street, which is right near Town Hall and Howard Avenue. And we came here because we wanted to be in a walkable community with nearby parks, libraries, shops, transit, and good public schools. And we have gained all of that and so much more, a real sense of community here. I've always known that when my kids are out running to noise, that people are keeping tabs on them. So I've gotten involved in the community over the years because I care about the community. In 2017, I convened neighbors to advocate for a long-term solution for Warner Circle Park, and we're well on our way to achieving that. And then in 2020, I joined with neighbors to create the Kensington Racial Justice Committee because I thought we could move beyond putting up signs to working together to create a more equitable and inclusive community right here in town. I have a track record of working with residents, town officials, town organizations, and businesses to get things done. Professionally, I've been a lawyer, a career executive in the federal government, a nonprofit leader and consultant. So I have a lot of experience working with diverse stakeholders. And if elected to town council, I would be honored to work with all of you to make Kensington an even more vibrant and walkable community for all of us.
That was excellent. Jon, why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Hi, good evening. I'm Jon Gerson. I'm a lifelong resident of Kensington. I grew up 6 doors down from the home on Washington Street, where Susan and I currently live and raised our kids. Like each of us, I love the town and constantly thinking about ways to enhance our quality of life for those who live and work here. I spend much of my leisure time talking with business owners throughout the town, as well as surrounding areas, to better understand their challenges and how we might help them to be more successful. I regularly attend gatherings like Food Truck Night and Farmers Market and Book Walk, and always looking to seek out new and prospective residents to ensure that they're familiar with the broad range of activities and services in our community. Over the past many years, I've attended both in person and more recently virtually, over 90% of the monthly town meetings, as well as council work sessions, DRB, and other meetings to learn the issues and fully understand the options. I enjoy a strong working relationship with everyone in the town office, from Matt, our town manager, and Susan Engel, the clerk treasurer, to Jason, Jamie, and each of those on the town crew. I served earlier on the town council and currently serve as chair of the Greenscape Committee, as well as being one of the original members of the Racial Justice, Menorah Lighting, and Dog Park Committees, in addition to volunteering to assist with the Labor Day Parade, Kensington 8K race, and other events. Even beyond our town boundaries, I was there when the Villages of Kensington was founded and continue to assist elderly neighbors in our community and those in need with weekly errands and rides and support. Kensington is my lifelong home. It's where I choose to socialize, volunteer, and hopefully lead as a member of the town council. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And Nate, your turn.
Great, thanks so much, Rob. I want to say hello, everybody. It's a great pleasure to be here. And hi, Ann and John, welcome. I'm really looking forward to the conversation tonight. I want to start by reintroducing myself to everybody. My name's Nate Engel, and I live with my wife, Sarah, and our 3 daughters, Ellery, Teddy, and Faye, over on Baltimore Street in the Pitchfork. We've lived here for the last 5 years, along with our cat Mango, a couple chickens, and a lot of mosquitoes. Before that, we lived over on Warner Street, just a few blocks away outside of the town boundaries. But we've been a part of this community for over a decade. For the last 2 years of that decade, I've spent my time as a town council member. And the issues that I ran back on 2020, I think, are as important today as they were back then. They were to really promote civility, to enhance sustainability, and to improve connectivity. And I really look forward to talking with you all about some of the things we were able to accomplish together around those themes tonight, and then also just to get into some of the issues that are facing us right now at this particular point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. So want to kind of divide up the questions into some categories. One of them being development, which we'll get to. Safety is another. But one of them that has popped up a lot is mobility and getting around town. One question that came up was asking about pedestrian safety, improving sidewalks and to residential streets, enhancing pedestrian safety, constructing sidewalks. But in addition, I'd also like to talk about, get everyone's views on things like dedicated bike lanes or ways of getting around town that do not involve a car and making it more of a walkable, pedestrian-friendly town to be in. Nate, you went last for your introduction, so how about you can go first on this answer?
Great, thanks so much, Rob. I have a lot to say on this issue, so please, if you're interested in knowing more, and I didn't get to touch on all the points, which I won't, please follow up with me. This has really been my proudest set of issues that I've worked on. When I first became a town council member, I established the pedestrian bicycling access and safety working group to do exactly what you're asking about, Rob. We've met monthly since then and developed a report with 13 recommendations, short-term, medium-term, long-term, that we can do to really advance pedestrian bicycling safety and access, move beyond just getting around town in vehicles. One of the things we did was do street by street audit of every single node and street in Kensington to identify where we needed to improve sidewalks, add crosswalks, and so on. And like I said, we've been working to implement them since. 2 things that I think will have a very long-term impact that we were able to achieve on that list of 13 recommendations that we've been working on is really to harness the technical expertise of our town. There's a lot of really great people who have knowledge and passion on these issues, to develop a grant with a couple of the local partners around the region to look at connectivity and safety on the Connecticut Avenue corridor, how to get past that. And then also a more comprehensive plan with the state to do a bicycling pedestrian priority area designation, which kicks off in a month. But again, I'm out of time. I'd love to keep talking about these issues, but I'll pass it on.
And John, how about you? I believe you might be muted here. Or...
All right, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, sorry. Yep. There's no question that Nate has, I think, done a really stellar job in terms of traffic and walkability and bikeability, and has brought his expertise to that area. This past weekend, I had the opportunity to spend a couple of hours with Casey Anderson, who's the chairman of the county's planning board. And he was at the KENGAR event, and we discussed the various kind of priorities and options associated with not just the proposed $24 million extension of Summit Avenue, which would reroute some of the traffic from the intersection of Knowles and Connecticut, but also safe pedestrian crossings at that location, along with Connecticut's intersection with Howard and Pliers Mill, and as well as those at Knowles, Dietrich, Pliers Mill, Metropolitan, and the whole host of challenging intersections. And we also talked about the 60,000 vehicles which travel through Kensington every day, independent of whether we approve another square foot of development. And the State Highway Administration, which ultimately has control over many of those intersections, is primarily focused, unfortunately, on ensuring the flow of traffic, which is what one would expect, but only recently became engaged in the pedestrian bicycle concerns. So the initiative that Nate is championing to help residents understand the various short-term, long-term options and associated cost, I think is an excellent step toward making genuine improvements.
Excellent. Ann.
Thank you. Well, my husband will tell you that I insisted on living somewhere that has sidewalks because I believe they're so important to not just safety, but interaction among neighbors, and mobility and pedestrian safety is really important to me. I, recently walked over to Continental Pizza and had to cross Connecticut with my 11-year-old son. And I had to carefully teach him at every intersection and crossing how many different ways he needed to be looking and being very careful. I don't want to give up on being able to walk with my son or having him walk independently in town. And that's why I was really happy to support Nate's effort, and with the Racial Justice Committee, got actively involved in making sure that we had diverse input. So I walked bus stations on Connecticut Avenue and talked to people who come into town and rely on public transit to work here. I was with Nate at the Kengar event that Jon just mentioned, with a table with the pedestrian safety options, soliciting input from our neighbors. And I'm really committed to working with the rest of the council on the solutions that the group is starting to identify.
Want to pick up on something you were just mentioning there with public safety. We've had a few incidents along Howard Avenue of some theft or even some armed theft, I believe. Starting to think about ways in which we can work with MCPS to ensure that our streets are safe, that there is proper protections for people who want to walk around. But there's also a concern, you mentioned being on the Racial Justice Committee, about over-policing and about making sure that our relationship with MCPS in the town is respectful, and one where residents don't feel like they're being over-policed. I want to throw to each of you to talk about the balance between making sure we have enough public safety, enough officers who can handle things that are going around town, but also ensuring that everyone's treated respectfully and not over-policed. Let's start with you first, Jon.
Okay, a budget reflects priorities, and it's a challenge because each person in the community has different things of interest. Well, you referenced MCPS, I'm assuming you mean MCPD, that Montgomery County Police Department.
MCPD. I'm getting my acronyms.
The acronyms all together.
MCPD.
So, right. So our town currently spends over $70,000 a year to pay for 3 part-time MCPD police officers to do traffic enforcement, because under the law, they're the only ones who can write tickets, although the town doesn't get any of that revenue. One of the things that might be an appropriate conversation with our residents is to ask for that money. Would that be the highest priority of where they would want the county police officers to be dedicated? And it's tough because you're not wanting to pit traffic enforcement against other safety issues. But I think that there's a limited amount of money. And if we currently are allocating $70,000 a year, but not getting any revenues from it, it might be that some of the things that you're talking about might be an even higher priority for our half square mile community.
Ann, how about you?
Thanks, Rob. So I'm aware of the recent incidents on Howard Avenue because I've been talking with the business owners, and I attended the forum that the town convened with our District 2 community officer last week to talk about crime prevention. And I think the first step is really awareness and looking at ways that we can prevent theft, be aware of when people are coming in and operating in groups and targeting stores where there's maybe a single person working at a time, sharing information about what's happening. And in terms of really guarding against profiling, I think that comes down to building relationships and building awareness within the community, that we can take steps to make sure that all people feel welcome here and feel welcome shopping here, and that we know each other and we can work together, even if we think that there's been, and we have seen these upticks in crime, to make sure that we're addressing it in a way that still creates a welcoming environment for everyone.
Nate?
So, yeah, I mean, just to carry on from what Ann was just saying, I was also present at and participated in the briefing and the forum that we had with Officer Stroman. She did an excellent job, I think, of laying out that exact issue, that it's all about building relationships with our officers and the ones that are going to be the officers that are typically engaged in our community, building the relationships with our town residents and business owners in particular, so that everyone's looking out for each other, and that you have that awareness of just who you're going to get when you happen to make a call if something's happening and you feel insecure or not safe. The other thing that was pointed out is I think prevention does a lot. I think profiling happens when you have to react, and in the moment that's where we run into some issues like that. However, one of the things that Officer Stroman offered were free commercial security assessments to do walkthroughs with the town business owners to see where they're vulnerable and how to enhance their security, so that you don't get into a situation where you're at risk. So I think our town businesses are probably keen to take that up, and I recommend that they do.
Wonderful. So going back to some of the questions submitted to us for the forum, a lot of questions about development, and everyone wants to know, how can we get better restaurants here in Kensington? Don't just want the national chains, but what can we do to attract more diverse eating options and places to go that are going to be family friendly or really attract the residents of the town and be a good fit for us? So what do you think is lacking, and how do we get more of what we need? Let's start with Ann this time.
Well, I'm smiling because we have actually made a lot of progress in town. We've got Dish and Dram, and we've got Deli Club, for example, that we didn't have, frankly, pizza. So I'm thrilled with the options we have now. But of course, we're a community that loves food and loves to eat, so we could always do more. My ideas for how to attract the types of eating and drinking establishments that we want are really to be out there, to be present, to know people in the community who are in the industry, who may be looking for the right location, and work with them to source that location, find that location. Maybe there's a space in town where we could have pop-up chefs and pop-up restaurants. We've already got local food trucks like Silver and Sons Barbecue in Kensington. That's one way that we could mix it up and start to find people that maybe want to put down roots here. My kids will tell you they would love it if we had a Carmen's Ices or option in town. So I think there's a lot of desire for people to shop and eat locally, and I'm all in favor of doing that.
Nate, what do you think? How do we get better or more?
I think our kids would also probably appreciate 5 or 6 more ice cream shops as well. Maybe a froyo place too, because they seem to have disappeared in the pandemic. I think there's only one around, and we hit it up last night. But in all seriousness, I agree absolutely with Ann. I think we've made a lot of progress on our restaurant scene in the last couple of years. And I think it's a testament to the town residents that we frequent these restaurants. I mean, throughout the pandemic, I don't think any of them closed because of the pandemic. And actually, we had, I think, a net gain in restaurants opening during the pandemic. So I think that just says, for those listening out there that are not residents of the town, you may want to start a business and open a restaurant. We will attend it and we will support you. I think I like the idea that Ann threw out about the like a pop-up restaurants. I've talked to some residents that they were interested in kind of promoting a food hub or incubator test kitchen of some sort but we have to, we have to work on finding a location for that. But I think it's a great idea. I think this could be an even better food destination than it already is, but I think we're doing a pretty good job. Thanks.
John, what do you think?
So this topic is one that is discussed not only in Kensington, but communities throughout the county, state, and our nation. I think former Mayor Fosselman did a good job of leading the effort to update the 1978 sector plan. And with Mayor Tracey's strong leadership in the council, they have, I think, indeed helped attract and retained a number of really good restaurants. One of the things I know from my earlier life with economic development and being head of the Chamber of Commerce is that people can have all kinds of ideas about what kind of retail or service firm they'd like to have, but often it is determined by the person who owns the building and is trying to lease it out, and what the marketplace will sustain. And for that reason, one of the things that I found is the most important thing we can do to help all businesses, not just restaurants, and the kind of different restaurants that people are talking about, is to grow the base of customers so that we have people with incomes that value those kinds of restaurants, but also diverse kinds of restaurants that reflect the community. So while each of us has strong ideas about what kind of restaurant and not a chain or whatever, I know that for somebody who owns a building, they've got to get at least, and in order to make it work financially. But if we can help grow the base of the customers that reflect the kinds of restaurants we're trying to attract, I think that indeed is how we have been successful so far with things like K-Town Bistro and Frankly Pizza and Dish and Dram and the others. And I think it's headed in a great direction. Our town is a better venue for restaurants than ever before.
Want to stick on the development part of it. We have a couple of things under development now, I guess, at Kensington Crossing, where the gas station was, now Hawkins. That looks like that project's moving forward, but also the Baker's Confectioner building, I believe, on Connecticut, or the Baker's Union building on Connecticut, has now been put up for sale. Part of that land is owned by the town in Kensington, so the town will have a say in some of the development. And wanted to ask, first off, what do we some of the lessons learned about the recent development projects went well? What would you like to see go differently? And then as an add-on, looking ahead to the Baker's building, the big one on Connecticut, I believe at the intersection of Knowles, how would you like to see that project progress? Let's start with Nate on this one.
Yeah, so the development process, I think over the last couple of years since I've been on council has more or less followed a similar path that it had previously. I think, the Development Review Board, which projects come to as a courtesy to the developers to review the project, see if it's aligned with what we want to see according to our sector plan, where they may be out of step or out of line, and really get the sense from the community for what we want and what we don't want. And the county takes, because we don't have zoning authority, the county takes our recommendation from the Development Review Board to the town council, and the town council's kind of thumbs up or thumbs down. They take that seriously. So I think more or less the process has been working. However, I think we could be more proactive. Like, for example, you mentioned the Baker's Union building. I think that right now is the time to, move past just the Development Review Board process. I mean, it's inherently reactive because it's reviewing what's presented in front of it, to thinking more proactively around what we want for that, having a conversation now in the community, not waiting till it comes to the DRB. So I think that that's something that where we could make some improvements on the development process.
Ann, what do you think?
Thanks. I want to follow up on Nate's point. I do think anything we can do to be more proactive benefits the community. I know that DRB chairs have made an effort to make sure people know what's happening. I think we can do more to inform residents even earlier as well. And in terms of what I would like to see happen as these projects move through the process, is that we are really paying attention to preserving and enhancing our green space, and our tree canopy, that we're thinking about walkability, mobility, and safety from the outset of a project, that we're thinking about environmental impact, whether that's stormwater management issues, traffic implications, also the opportunity to press for stronger green standards. I think these are things that we need to do in order to ensure that development can add more than it can detract from our community. And those are the types of concerns that if I'm on the town council, I will be actively engaging on.
And Jon, what's your thoughts on development in those projects?
Right. So the Bakers Union building, which is, for those who aren't familiar, located on the southeast corner of Connecticut Knolls, solicited bids for its sale. And you're right that it's going to soon announce its purchaser. And as you pointed out, Rob, the town owns 2 green strips, one on Connecticut and another behind the building on Armory, which offers us the chance to help drive its development. Similarly, and you didn't mention this one, but the HOC building, formerly Kensington Elementary on Dietrich, is leaving that site, which will result in the school system taking back the property. While MCPS is exploring which program will be located there, the town has an arguable claim to ownership of 2 to 3 parcels, which again offer us, I think, a seat at the table. Across the street from the Bakers Union building on the southwest corner of Connecticut Knolls, 10400 is a 60-year-old office medical building that's owned by an absentee landlord who's not concerned about increasing vacancy rates or the fact that they're not a good neighbor. And then, of course, the Huggins property, the former gas station on the southeast corner of Connecticut and Flyers Mill, is about to be approved by the planning board. And while the town pushed back on the developer's plan for self-storage, because it wasn't mixed use, the project's now going to be all retail. Hopefully, on that one is the adjacent strip center, the 7-Eleven and Baskin Robbins undergoes renovation. There'll be an opportunity to revisit both of the parcels, but they have the added challenge of poor access from those traveling south on Connecticut because the Flyers Mill entrance will be closed. So yeah, I think for us to be much more proactive in terms of having conversations with owners of properties before we sort of are finding out about it afterward, I think is a plus.
Great. I want to touch on something Ann just brought up, which green spaces. We have a question about green spaces from submitted from a member of the town. We saw the dog park open, the fountain, and the pavilion at St. Paul Park. What is your vision for Kensington's green spaces, and where could there be even more expansion in the future? We'll start with you, Ann.
Well, I love this question. Some people know I'm an avid gardener, and I think that, you know, Kensington has historic roots as a garden park community. So anything that we can do to enhance and preserve our green space not only adds to our quality of life, but is super important given climate change and intense rains and the heat that we're facing. So I am very interested in pushing forward some of the ideas that were in the sector plan to add trees to the urban core where we have a lot of heat. I'm also interested in working with businesses to see how we can add green vegetation to our commercial area. I think we have an opportunity to do more to protect our tree canopy. I'd like to see an active tree inventory and working with residents and businesses alike to add to the tree canopy. And I would love a community process where we could identify those little pockets of green space that we could really actively work to improve and enhance.
Excellent. Jon, how about you? Where would you like to see improvements and enhance?
Okay. So we're fortunate. We have actually, I guess, 11 parks embedded in our incorporated municipality, including postage stamp parks and ones like that. Clem Kennedy Garden, which has been completely made into an amazing space. Over the weekend, Mayor Furman and I were at the Edith Throckmorton Park dedication in Kengar, and the labyrinth there is something that some folks have been talking about to put in Joseph's Park, which is the small, I guess, 1 acre parcel there on Wheatley Avenue. In terms of trees and preservation. One of the things that I've been talking with Molly Gallant of the Parks Department is to get certified weed warrior volunteers, because officially one is not supposed to remove non-native invasive plants without supervision. So being able to comply with the regulations to allow us to do some of the things along the park beds in Silver Creek, for instance, that the Park and Planning Commission is not really able to do, I think would be some of the things we can do to improve in that.
Nate?
Yeah, so I when I first came on to town council, I was on the Greenscape committee, and we, during my time on the committee for that first year, we did make a lot of improvements, like John was referencing, to Clum Kennedy, some of the parks that we have, like Joseph Park, adding the labyrinth there. So there are ongoing improvements that I think we can do as a community to our existing parks in terms of where to expand into places. I think, there are two areas that haven't yet been touched on that I just wanted to flag. One is where it intersects with the issue of climate change and flooding. I think we have a lot of opportunity to use some of our parks as natural infrastructure, or what you would call green infrastructure, to help manage stormwater runoff. It's the biggest issue facing us with climate change. And take the Cabin Park, for example, that floods all the time. But imagine if we build it to plan to flood, so that it can then be infiltrating into the groundwater more easily, so it doesn't just sit there. It actually helps to get it back into the stream. Another place is on green roofs. So when we're advocating on the DRB process and for development, as I've been doing that for green building standards, that includes getting green onto our buildings on top of them, as well as solar panels. So I think that's another area of an untapped resource.
Yeah, I'm remembering when Kensington Parkway, the whole parkway flooded. What was it this year? I was pretty crazy. So
yeah,
that'd be a good improvement. Everyone always wants to talk about traffic in these these forums, and we have another question here about we hit on pedestrian safety, but it was about, just looking through, how would we have more traffic calming measures so people aren't zipping through. And I would like to say, on my side of town, we recently expanded the boundaries of Kensington to include Perry. We added a street there, but the signs for when you can go in and out of our neighborhood still, I guess, start at Farragut or maybe anyway, the block before. So wondering, as part of traffic calming, recognizing that there's only so much we can do with Connecticut Avenue and Knowles being part of the county or the state highway system, what can be done with signage? What can be done with other measures to make sure that cars aren't just zipping through our town all the time? And we can start with you, John, on this one.
Okay, so traffic is like water. Obviously, if we block it one place, it's going to go ahead and flow elsewhere. In our community, each person is very aware, whether they're in the Pitchfork area or the north side or up Kent or on Kensington Parkway, about the nature of traffic and signage and the impact on them. And so one of the things that I do think we should do, much like some of the things we've been talking about in terms of other issues tonight, is take a more kind of global, comprehensive look at our traffic choices. Again, I referenced the officers that we are paying to go and enforce traffic, and we keep kind of moving them around in this kind of cat and mouse game, and that doesn't resolve anything. It simply is designed to be a deterrent, and then we're in this position of we have to keep adding additional revenue to try and deter people from cutting through, and it's sort of like whoever is jumping up and down the most at a traffic meeting and we try to move the officers there. And I think that indeed, for us to do a more global look with everybody in town and figure out how to make choices that are not going to require us to keep adding more and more revenue in terms of or expenditures with no revenue is one of the things that we can do, because right now our primary thing is simply signing and enforcement. And again, what that does is simply push it on to one of our neighbors in Kensington, which does not seem friendly.
And what about you? And I should say that the question that came in particularly pointed out Kensington Parkway and Kent Street, saying that the time of day restrictions there are routinely ignored, and these left turn restrictions are frustrating. And I guess a lot of things that John was bringing up, but what would you like to see about traffic calming regulations, signage, and ways to make it so we can get around, but also not be inundated with cars zipping through?
Yeah, I know we all care about this issue deeply. Sometimes we can't get out of our neighborhood. Sometimes we don't feel safe walking in our neighborhood. So I'm in favor of some of the options that have been under review with the mobility and bike and pedestrian safety study. And I think that marks a shift, right? That we're going to not just prioritize cars getting through town as fast as they possibly can, but we're going to prioritize safety. So putting in place efforts to narrow lanes, lower speed limits, create greater pedestrian buffers, I think are all important and need to be part of our traffic solutions. In terms of people cutting through, which I know has only gotten worse with Waze and other apps, I think signage is important, but signage only works if we have some enforcement. And so I think we need to be strategic about when and where we enforce to deal with the most problematic areas. And then I think I would just close by saying there's not one single solution that's going to solve it for us. So we have to put all of these measures sort of together to try to make an impact on the traffic.
Nate?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of what's been said on this particular question. So, I mean, Ann touched on some of the things we're doing in the pedestrian bicycling access and safety working group, and really that study that's really looking deeply at what we can do in the short term to add crosswalks at certain areas along Connecticut. Like Ann said, reduce the width of the lanes, add a buffer, a grass buffer, high visibility crosswalks, and other traffic calming measures. I think that's really the way to go. It's not going to, there's no silver bullet. It's going to continue no matter what, but if we can calm traffic, the more that we can do that and balance that with pedestrians and bicyclists and other modes of transit, better. One thing I'm really proud that we did as a town council this past year was we voted to reduce the speed limit throughout town from 25 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour starting on July 1st. And we're advocating with the state to do that too, from 30 to 25 along Connecticut Avenue. So I think, it is balancing the restrictions, the signage and enforcement, but also expectations. We have a mobility and traffic committee now, and we have a process that you can, we should be updating these issues in our consideration of signage and enforcement. We should be doing that iteratively, and that's why we have a mobility and traffic committee. So I encourage residents that are interested in bringing an issue up to bring it to the mobility and traffic committee so it can be analyzed, discussed, and studied to see where improvements need to be made or changes need to be made.
And we have one more traffic question because everyone likes to talk about traffic. This one concerns the Summit Avenue bypass, which I believe John mentioned earlier. People are talking about as a good long-term solution to kind of ease the congestion that happens during rush hour along Knowles, Connecticut, Cedar and Summit with the traffic being diverted. But this would cause maybe some disruptions to the Kengar neighborhood that some residents are worried about. What is your, and ultimately this is a project that's been going through the county and the state. So what is your view of the Summit Avenue bypass, and which ways should the town be involved in helping to shape how it ultimately comes out or doesn't come out? Nate, let's start with you.
No, I'm really glad you asked about this because this is an issue that comes up, I think, in every debate, and it will for the next 10 years, because we just found out that if it happens, it will not be done till fiscal year 31, I think. So this is going to be a constant conversation point, and it should be, particularly for the reasons that you said. I think some of the residents in Kengar are concerned, and rightfully so. And I think that we need to hear those concerns. We've continued to keep the project alive as a town council by advocating for it to remain in the capital improvement projects budget for the county, because we need that option on the table. And my biggest concern, to be honest, with the project right now is the terminus of it, where it dumps off at University in Connecticut creates an absolute nightmare for pedestrians and bicyclists. It's like, if you look on the detailed engineering design, it's like Frogger trying to cross there. So I think we need to really think hard about that why and that split as the Summit Avenue extension ends. And we have now 10 years until that's finished, maybe 5 to plan. We should be having that conversation now. And I'm really looking forward to, hopefully, if I get reelected, to really champion that issue, to study that.
And Ann, how do you balance the needs for, better traffic, but also making sure that the Kingar neighbors, the people in that neighborhood are being heard and their concerns are being addressed as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you asked. I mean, I agree that Summit Avenue should be on the table because we need to look at all options for alleviating traffic. But I also strongly believe that we need to have a very vigorous community engagement process as we go through the planning and any design phase for something like that. And in particular, paying attention to the impacted property owners and to the residents of Kingar. That neighborhood, is tucked away. And if there's more development that doesn't add to their quality of life, but detracts, then I think that's a problem. And we need to work closely, not just with our Kingar residents, but with all community members to see how we can design a solution that balances all of these competing interests, right? We want walkability, we want better stormwater management, we want less traffic, we want better connectivity in our neighborhoods. And so I would look to see how Summit Avenue does or does not help us balance those different interests.
And Jon?
Yeah, so Summit Avenue extension has long been debated and discussed, and it has never been as moving as far forward as it is right now. People who are concerned about intersections like Knowles and Connecticut also have to, I think, take some responsibility for alleviating some of the traffic that flows along Summit Avenue to make the turn onto Knowles, to go through that intersection to go north on Connecticut and University. The Summit Avenue extension would take a significant amount of that traffic out of that intersection. It also, I think, is, I think some of the concerns folks from Kingar, although again, when I talked to a number of them, I'm not sure whether they're as concerned as some might portray, because the more that they understand where it's going and where it's not going, and the more that they understand about efforts in terms of sound and the barriers and so forth, the less I think some of these issues are. It is absolutely not true that Summit Avenue extension is going to in any way go through Kingar community. So again, if somebody is wanting to help be a leader, I think that it's important to help facilitate that project happening, and also help make sure that the residents of the community are absolutely, all residents, not just in Kensington, but Kingar and the other areas are involved. It does, by the way, again, offer an opportunity. And I know this question is about traffic, but when we talk about economic development and expanding our tax base, when Summit Avenue is extended, that will add additional commercial property, which will generate additional tax revenues for our community. We have seen a huge shift in tax revenues from commercial onto the property, onto the residential sector. And one of the things that we have to continue to do is to figure out how to get more revenues from those in the commercial sector. And if Summit Avenue development is allowed to occur along the extension, that would help generate a lot of, I think, important revenues for our other initiatives.
Jon, I want to stick with you on this idea of money and tax revenue. A question came through. Our review of our town's current $4.5 million budget as you look it over, are there changes you might advocate for as a member of the council? And I am guessing too that budget might be going up as we welcome in more residents who are entering into these new residences that are just being built, I guess, on Metropolitan and on Knowles. And so if we have more people coming in, more money in the coffers, how do you plan on maybe spending it? I personally like that we get our streets plowed before all the people in Parkwood. I think that's great. But anything else you would like to put the money into that you think would be good as the revenue grows?
So thank you, because one of the things I did earlier in life was I worked for the Municipal Finance Officers Association, the Government Finance Research Center, where they talked about alternative revenue sources and ways of funding government. There's a limit on our ability, I think, to increase taxes. We increasingly are hearing residents say they're not comfortable with tax increases, and obviously there's, I think, a limit to ability to cut services. So really expanding our base is key. And as I mentioned, over the past 10 years, there's really been this dramatic shift in property tax revenue from the commercial sector onto the residential sector. The recent annexation of the 40 single-family homes and the 3 commercial properties was positive, and those folks are indeed benefiting from the town's services. As we make choices, and I think the mayor and council have done a good job in terms of transitioning from one town manager to another, and hiring a full-time code enforcement officer, and bringing communication specialist in-house, and other organizational changes. I think it's an opportunity for us to engage with our residents about their view of our priorities, so that sometimes folks aren't hearing about the decision when it's sort of a fait accompli or the job announcements going out, because I think that that residents have various perspectives on where they would want to prioritize money, and obviously many different people have many different opinions. That's part of the nature of leadership, but important part of that is asking folks. And so I think those are some of the ways I would look at our budget a little differently.
And as Nate, as someone who's currently looking at the budget, this $4.5 million, how are we spending it? Are there ways we should be thinking about it differently? And if it grows, where would you like to put more money toward?
Yeah, that's yeah. So I think we're spending it well. I think that the $4.5 million, the biggest chunk of that is going to our greatest asset, which is our town staff, the workers, their salaries, and the ones that keep this wonderful government moving and working well for you. The additional money, the revenues that we have, if we have a surplus, it gets put into our capital improvements budget. I think we're going to see, as Jon noted, with additional revenues coming in, that budget line growing. And I think that we need to increasingly have a conversation with the community about what we want to use it for. Right now, that's allocated for the surplus in the capital improvements budget, in addition to the American Rescue Plan funding we are getting from the federal government coming out of the pandemic. That's being put to stormwater management, doing analysis to replace our much needed replacements of the stormwater system to basically adapt to climate change. I think though it doesn't have to be just infrastructure. We could be investing in affordable housing, other issues that I think we need to have a conversation as a community as that budget line continues to grow. Thanks.
Ann?
Thank you. Well, I want to echo some of what we heard from Jon and Nate. First, I think we're fortunate that we have a municipal government and a leadership team that has managed our budget well, and it's important that we continue to do so. It's because of that strong fiscal management that we're able to enjoy the great town services we have, our beautiful parks, and the capital improvements that you just heard mentioned. So I'm really interested in exploring participatory budget processes. These are used in communities to engage residents and taxpayers in discussions about how to allocate public funds. And I think we have an opportunity to do that here in town as we move forward. We have a lot of priorities, many of which have been discussed already tonight. But I think the best way to figure out how to prioritize our spending is to actually engage our fellow citizens and residents in that conversation. And I would be happy to help participate and lead a process like that if I were on town council.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question before we wrap it up. So I'll make it a broad one. And just to ask, what would be your top priority moving forward in the next 2 years? We've just come out, or hopefully we've come out of this COVID era, and we're thinking about where we want to see the future. We touched on a lot of these topics, but what would be really your top priority and things that you'd be advocating for most as a member of the council? Let's start with you, Ann.
Well, it's hard to pick one priority. I will say, I really care, as you heard, about pedestrian safety and mobility, enhancing and preserving our green space, and creating an even more welcoming and inclusive community. And for me, that also means taking a look at housing and how to make housing more attainable in town, and also preserving the housing options that we do have. I imagine that those issues are ones that we can find a lot of ways to make progress on if we not only are bringing residents together, but bringing town organizations and businesses together, leveraging our relationships across the county and across the state to really make progress in those areas.
And Nate?
Yeah, I think as I kind of alluded to earlier, I think there's still work to be done on pedestrian and bicycling access and safety. I really would hope to see those initiatives through and continue to work on them. But I think one other thing, as that kind of gets wrapped up, if I'm reelected, one of the other things I would like to really advocate for and push is for the town to seek sustainable Maryland community designation. It's something that over 50% of the municipalities in Maryland have, but we don't. I think we can and we should be a leader on issues around sustainability. It's a process. It involves changing some of the things we do. It involves really analyzing how we can do better on things like greenhouse gas emissions reductions, adapting to climate change, and so on. So I would really look forward to getting a lot of the technical expertise and the passions together, similarly to how I did with the pedestrian bicycling access and safety working group, to take this initiative forward and really put Kensington on the map as a leader on sustainability.
And Jon, how about you? Your priority?
Right. So I, as the former director of the county's Office of Economic Development, where one of the things we did was put together the first strategic plan, I came to really appreciate the importance of proactively reaching out and establishing relationships to ensure that community is familiar with an opportunity before it sort of comes to fruition. In addition, including residents and some of their own insight early in the process. I think Mayor Furman has done an awesome job in so many respects, not only in terms of pre-COVID, but vision for art and restaurants and so many things. I mean, there's a lot that's awesome about Kensington. While we were fortunate that Park and Planning collaborated with the Friends of Warner Circle to purchase the Warner Mansion in 2005, that opportunity was almost lost when a developer previously negotiated to buy the property from the original nursing home. And some of you may be familiar with the recent post I put on the listserv referencing the Mormon Church's plans to sell their garden apartment complex located on Frederick Avenue, the one across from Kensington House, as the increase of parishioners permanently living in the area has diminished the need for temporary housing for those who serve a church mission. And so while the sector plan will make sure that that site, for instance, is still multifamily housing, it also means we have an opportunity to, again, enhance tax revenue not realized from the current church-owned tax exempt property, as well as income tax and so forth. And while the representatives of the church have indicated that a decision is still being made, it's important for residents to be made aware of changes like that and be included in the conversations. There are a number of those kinds of things, whether it's on the budget or economic development or so forth, that I think sometimes we should include folks and trust the judgment of our residents on the ground floor, because I think that would help make it that much better.
All right, so we're coming up toward 8 o'clock. And so each of you will have 90 seconds for a closing statement. Let's start with Councilmember Engel. Nate.
No. I was going to ask Rob, no rapid fire round this.
Oh, no
this
rapid
round?
fire. Oh, your favorite color? No.
Just kidding.
I don't know.
No, I'm just joking.
I think we got through everything. Everyone had
Okay.
everyone
Fair
had
enough.
questions and good answers. So
I thought everyone would want to know favorite restaurants. And no, I'm just kidding. So, no, great. So thanks, Rob, for moderating again. An excellent job. I know that this is kind of old hat for you. So thanks again for doing this. Thanks also for Matt and Alex and the rest of the town staff for helping to organize this, and the town council and the mayor. Also, Ann and John, I just want to say thank you. It's been a great discussion. I think it's really clear that you all are really effective leaders and really care passionately about this town. So I also want to just say really quickly, thanks to the residents for the 42 of you who have stayed until this point. Congratulations and thank you. And for those who are maybe watching this afterwards, thank you also. Hope you learned something about the issues that are really facing our town. So, you know, when my family moved here 11 years ago to the community, we immediately fell in love with Kensington. I think it's a pretty similar reaction that most people have when they come here. You know, falling in love with the businesses, the art scene, the restaurants, the character, most importantly, the people, you all, the residents. And somehow that love and that affection, our love and affection, continues to grow day in, day out. And, you know, over the last 2 years that I've served as town council member, I can say that, you know, unequivocally, I've enjoyed every moment of it. And I really, really hope that I've made you proud as a council member, and that you can see that I've delivered on what I said I would do, and I've listened to your concerns, and hopefully you think like I do that we accomplished a lot together over the last 2 years. I really look forward to continuing that. There's a lot more work to do, and I would be humbly requesting your vote to re-elect me in 2 weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate. John, your closing statement.
So I would also like to express my thanks to Rob and Matt and everybody who helped put the forum together, because it offers voters an opportunity to make an informed choice in the upcoming election. The good news is, whether Ann, Nate, or I end up on the council, each of us has a genuine commitment to our town. I think we'll continue to champion our various initiatives. The tenor and tone of this campaign has been very positive, and that speaks to one of our most important values, which at the end of the day, our town is not really defined by the Victorian homes and the mature trees or red brick sidewalks, but rather by the way in which we engage with each other. Our community is genuinely a bastion of civility. And I think Kensington is a wonderful place in which to live and do business, but it's the people and the way in which we engage with one another that makes that truly special. I believe relationships with people are key to successfully achieving shared goals and creating special communities. That means not just reaching out and connecting with every resident to ensure they feel respected and their individual contributions are valued and celebrated, but it also means knowing the players at the county and state levels of government, as well as those in the private and nonprofit sectors. We really are a knowledge-based economy where the federal labs like NIH and FDA and NOAA help generate the important customers for retail and service firms and tenants for vacant office space. In addition to my volunteer work, my professional roles over the years have built strong relationships and partnerships between those who seek quality schools and smart transportation and safe neighborhoods and responsive services, as well as those who help generate the important tax revenues, which makes those things possible. So I ask for your vote in the upcoming election, and I thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much, John. And Ann, your closing statement.
Thank you, Rob. And thank you, Rob, for moderating this discussion tonight. I'm pleased that I was able to participate along with Nate and John, and echo their sentiments that you can see that we all care deeply about this community and want to serve because we want to help make it better. And I want to thank all the residents who also feel that way and who are showing up to participate tonight and listen, and those that will be listening in the future. I would say that as hopefully you can tell from tonight's conversation, that I'm motivated to serve because I care about this community. I have worked in a number of different roles as a volunteer, And I think through that work, I've not only built strong relationships, but I've proven that I can work with residents, town organizations, town officials, and others in a way that brings people together, helps us get organized, helps us figure out what it is we want to do together, and really move beyond worrying about issues or talking about issues into doing something about them. I can tell you that my approach is to be one who likes to learn and listen. I don't come into roles pretending that I have all the answers. Instead, I would work with my colleagues and work with my neighbors to figure out how to move forward in a way that best serves our community and the type of place that we want Kensington to be now and in the future. So I am happy to answer any questions. You can find my information in the Town Journal, and I look forward to working with all of you and hope I have your vote on June 6th.
Thank you very much, Ann Lichter, Nate Engel, and Jon Gerson. And thanks also to Matt Hoffman, Mayor Tracey Furman, Alex Marini, and Melissa Amel from the Montgomery Municipal Cable System. Again, a reminder, Monday the 6th is when we're going to have in-person voting at Town Hall from 6 to 9 p.m. or visit tok.md.gov if you want to vote absentee or for more information about the upcoming election. Thank you all so much for these really thoughtful answers. I know I'm learning a lot already, and I'm like, oh, this is great. So much to look forward to. And thank you so much for participating in this discussion, in this forum.
Take care. Have a good night.
Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everybody.
And thanks everyone
Thank
for
you. Good night.
listening in. Good night, everyone.